It's always a pleasure, sir, to be here at Tampa Bay Watch and to enjoy your very fine facilities. I'm very impressed with the space, its location, the siting, and if I seem to display a touch of Baywatch envy. Ladies and gentlemen, let me join Peter in welcoming you this afternoon to our introduction to the Wave of Change campaign. This is something that we are quite enthusiastic and really very excited about. I'm impressed by two things. One, that on a fine afternoon, on a Friday afternoon, we would dare invite you to spend time indoors, but you're here. And I think you're here because the theme matters. The oceans matter to you. And you're here to help to see what we are doing and what you might be able to do to assist this effort. What I hope we'll be able to accomplish this afternoon is a conversation about the seas and oceans, about our part in it, and what our respective organizations are doing, and how we might be able to join efforts. So we'd like to leave, Peter, with a sense of commitment that here is a framework and an umbrella under which we can all explain and express our respective actions. So I personally am very excited about the turnout, the number of people that have responded, and as you see, the traffic may be slowing down others. And I'd like to really express not only a word of welcome, but a word of appreciation to you. Let me give you a little bit of background about who we are and why we are here. I come out of the United Nations community, also the Oceans community. I'm a member of the International Oceans Institute headquartered in Malta. And the Wave of Change campaign is an inspiration from the Oceans Institute. The Institute has a rather interesting background. It was the vision of a single individual, Elizabeth Mann Borghese, who was the daughter of Thomas Mann, whom most of you may know, and she was very actively associated with the law of the sea negotiations. For nearly 3 decades, we were wrestling to design and develop a constitution for the seas and oceans. We now have it. It has entered into force and it is working. The challenge is, how do we get developing countries and countries with limited capacity becoming more involved in implementation? Elizabeth had the idea that it's not enough to negotiate a convention, to sign it and ratify it, and to celebrate its entry into force. There's a hard task of implementation. And many countries that have signed do not have the capacity. And so she created this mechanism that would be designed essentially to assist developing countries in capacity building. And for the last 30 years, she has developed a training program at the International Oceans Institute. That's our flagship. We train a number of mid-level professionals from developing countries about the latest state of the science, what policy challenges are, and how they may develop new aptitudes and capacity for helping to manage ocean space. I direct one of those programs at Halifax, Nova Scotia, and I'm rather pleased with the way that has happened. It's my fun time of the year, not only because Halifax is such a pleasant maritime town, but because I think one gets a measure of what we're trying to achieve in the educational realm, and so we're very, very excited about that. The Institute has some 26 operational centers around the world. The most recent is the one that we have established at the University of South Florida, and Chris Delia is the executive director of that center. He's not here this afternoon, but sends his regrets. I think he's one that I think you'll find that wants to work very much with us. But this afternoon, we're here to let you know that the Wave of Change was an inspiration from that particular institution. We know the science. You know the science. The oceans is facing an impending crisis. And it's not simply about overfishing or about waste and maritime litter. It's about a combination of factors, including the issue of climate change and the deposit of carbon in the oceans. It seems so vast and so intractable that very few people feel that we might take it on. Nonetheless, I think there are areas and spheres of action where we might be able to make at least a contribution. And that's what the Wave of Change is all about. How can we identify specific areas where we might be able to take some action and make a difference? We've identified 6. One is the question of ocean literacy. We're woefully ignorant about the oceans and what it means to our lives and well-being. For most people who are not coastal, it seems a far place from their respective lives and lifestyle, but it's important. How do you develop a new consciousness for ocean values? How do you translate the science? And I see my friend John England is here this evening, and he's going to try to decode some complex science for us as we look at the question of climate and the ocean. But how do you deal with that? That's one issue that we're addressing. There's another question, the question of maritime waste and litter. When you look at the numbers, it boggles the mind. Some of us have been looking at the Pacific Jar and are really quite concerned as how much plastics remain in the oceans. Some people are responding to the maritime litter challenge, and I see my friend here, Vince Albanese, from the Green Armada. They have started to address the ocean litter problem, and every year they have a number of cleanup campaigns. But we'd like to develop a larger program of action in dealing with ocean maritime waste and litter. And so, because we are people who operate on the level of fantasy, we thought the US Navy would be a very good place to begin. And so we are in contact with the US Navy, and I've got a very good sort of response from the Coast Guard to see if a real Green Armada might be developed and address this problem. And it's not too far-fetched. Some of them follow the question of piracy on the seas and ocean, and the Somalis with their little antics, which can become deadly at times. There are 40 vessels in the Gulf, addressing the question of piracy. And piracy is a crime, but nowhere is it as significant and relevant as the question of maritime waste and litter. So why not mobilize the navies of the world? Perhaps a bit fanciful, but we are prepared to cultivate our fantasy resources and approach people in this area. The question of maritime food security is a very real and urgent one. And it's not simply about overfishing. It's about habitat loss and destruction. And so consequently, we are beginning to address that issue as a matter of some urgency. Most of you recall that about 6 months ago, the United Nations had a conference on the whole question of global food security. But they didn't have the maritime dimension. Maritime food security was not part of the central agenda. We want to address that. The question of ecosystems restoration. How do you restore degraded ecosystems? Most of us know about the reef degradation, but few of us are able to address some of the larger problems of ecosystems degradation and damage. And so we're very, very much interested in this. We're also interested in the question of climate and the seas and oceans, and John will talk about that later. John, as you know, is from the Seakeeper Society, and he has a good message and a good way of looking at that for us, and I hope we will be able to enlighten us a little bit. And then ocean champions. Very few things succeed without someone taking up the cause, as Peter will clearly attest. We would like to cultivate, encourage, and inspire and honor the champions of the seas and oceans, the people who are making a difference there. And that's a little package that we've put together, and Abraham will talk a little bit more about that this afternoon. But ladies and gentlemen, what it all boils down to, the oceans need a bailout package. And I've been following the arguments in Washington and boggled by the numbers, but the oceans need a bailout package. Otherwise, our entire survival is in doubt. We would hope that the campaign will at least alert some people to the need to address the ocean seriously, to support it. So we're very excited that we have introduced you to what we're attempting to do, but most importantly, that you're here. And that you might be interested in looking at what the agenda is, as Dave explains it, and how we might be able to cooperate in putting together a real team and a real campaign. And why I must appeal to you is because we're the Oceans Institute, know to do a lot of things. We know how to work with governments and scientists. We don't know how to work with people at the grassroots level. Most of you are from citizens organizations, and you know how to work with people. And that is why you're essential to the campaign. So welcome, thank you for your attention. We're looking forward to engaging in a very spirited conversation on the state of the seas and the oceans and the Wave of Change campaign. Dave, I think you're panting for the floor. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.